Hello and welcome to Do You Realise That You Have the Most Beautiful Taste? A podcast where I, Nic founder of Molly Rose Brewing, host flavour makers, shakers and tasters to dig into where they get their inspiration from. Live on this podcast, we'll grab some of their best ideas and collaborate on a drink, beer or otherwise. And the most delicious part is that you can taste the outcomes when we release the collaborations out into the wild.
Welcome to this month's show. I've got Mat Bate from Minimum Wines. Thanks for coming on, Matt.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, absolute pleasure.
I think we're going to taste some beers, have a bit of a chat, and get into it.
I'm super excited.
This is one of our beers we're making for 5 years now. It's a dark lager with Kombu and smoking. Yeah. So it is based on Japanese food.
Yeah, it is.
So this is the only thing we've got with seaweed at the moment.
Okay. And because, there's seaweed has been kind of used in beer. A lot of the emulsifiers and stuff that you find in brews and stuff is usually extracted from algae. Mm-hmm. So seaweed kind of finds its way into beer anyway. You know?
Yeah. Carrageenan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, from Irish
findings. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers, dude.
Welcome.
Oh yeah, yum.
So what are we going to make? I want to use some seaweed because that's what you're into.
Yeah, I think we should use seaweed. Especially after tasting your pastisses. Do some kind of a bootleg liquor thing with seaweed.
Cool. So something savoury. Are you thinking like along the lines of pastis, where it's kind of it's spirit strength, but it's almost a liqueur?
I mean, that would be amazing. That's definitely I definitely at home make enjoy making cocktails and stuff, but to have something like a pastis, like an aperitivo digestive thing that you can sip on, whether it be that or limoncello or something like that, those kinds of drinks are for me super complex and also usually taken by themselves. There is something about that is kind of special. So that could be
something
pretty fun.
Umami, spicy, bitter, digestive, or aperitif.
Either way, just have it by itself, that could be really fun.
Very interesting. All right, well, let's grab a couple of aperitifs. And
now that I've said that, is your mind automatically going to things? The
Not
way
really,
your mind
no.
works? Okay, cool.
Nah. My mind is open.
Okay, so
let's grab a couple of aperitifs, I reckon, and digestives, and go upstairs to the podcast room.
Okay.
We'll have a taste and have a look.
Cool. Love it.
We've made our way up to the podcast room. And we've got all of these Amaros and liqueurs up here.
Yeah.
When you said liqueur, spirit, kombu, I automatically thought dark.
Yeah.
And rich.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think that's because that's how I use it.
Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah.
And that's how I think of savoury flavours as having a bit more depth and carry. Yeah. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I agree. I wrote this book on seaweed for kids. It came out a few years ago. It's kind of like seaweed in the context of climate change and all that kind of stuff. But the major kind of premises of, I guess, the work is to bring seaweed kind of out of the darkness, because that's usually where it kind of lives in our subconscious and stuff. The ocean is this dark place, and therefore it's quite easy to exploit. But they are kind of these dark environments under there, especially kombu, and especially the larger kelps. They actually would block the sunlight. I've dived in kelp forests and stuff, and they are dark environments. So I think actually doing something that's kind of dark is kind of interesting, actually.
So what's the name of the book?
It's called With a Little Kelp from Our Friends.
I love it.
Has been for some weird reason a special interest seaweed. After kind of tracking into regenerative agriculture and stuff and coming across seaweed farming and stuff like that, there really isn't that many good resources for children around seaweed, and especially in the context of ocean acidification and all of that stuff. So it's now just become a world, a seaweed world that I'm now just kind of embedded in.
You're just into seaweed. You're a seaweed dude.
And I don't know.
Did you study seaweed?
No.
You just got into it.
Yeah, somehow. And I also think that's why the darkness is interesting, because it kind of grabbed me actually and pulled me down. Mm-hmm. In some way. I had no connection to seaweed really. I've spent a bit of time down in the Gippsland Lakes. My family kind of have been holidaying there for 50 years and stuff. So definitely the water and the ocean is not foreign to me. But definitely didn't study seaweed science or anything. There's a magnetic quality around seaweed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why. It just has this thing. And it also is interesting because it's such a foundation for ocean ecosystems. And they're such represented places, really. Like in politics and stuff, no one's really ever talking about the ocean, although it's most of the earth. Most of the biosphere is underwater. So it's kind of this weird place that's really important. And so it just kind of attracts, especially artists. It's really metaphorical. They move in really interesting ways. They refract light in really interesting ways. And so, it's just a really cool space to think about all this other stuff. So
nice. Yeah.
That just kind of took...
There's a subculture, an underculture.
Totally. Yeah, like a subterranean culture, and especially...
seaweed.
Yeah, and it's like kind of like subversive. And there was also, a bunch of us artists that were kind of writing about climate change. And we're kind of becoming a little bit frustrated about the fact that we were kind of writing in this really factual, science-based way and stuff. And I think just like turned to seaweed as this thing that was a little bit more fluid. And we're actually kind of using it as like a teacher. Like actually using seaweed and how it operates in the water as a way that we could mirror on land.
Mm-hmm.
Like in some way that was happening, whether we liked it or not.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's part of my like weird obsession with seaweed.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Do you see, as part of that future investigation into seaweed and more awareness around seaweed, as it becoming part of our eating culture more in Australia?
Big time. Yeah. And that's I think actually well, for me, I think that's kind of exciting as someone that is interested in putting things in your mouth that taste good. And definitely actually like my book especially has found its way into the classrooms, and they're actually quite interested in that because seaweed is a thing that you can touch, but it's also something that you can eat too, and you can blend with. So there's also like classrooms that are using seaweed as an ability to teach about the environment whilst also teaching about food, because they're like in the kitchen with some chef doing something on seaweed and eating it, and are kind of like doing this education model which allows them to teach on multiple levels. And so food's like a massive part of that as well, which is super exciting, and because it's like, it is not only is it a foundational kind of ecosystem thing in the water, like it's foundational to like cuisine in general.
Totally. Just not in Western cuisine.
Exactly. Yeah, in Australia for whatever reason. Well, I mean, we haven't historically, I guess, like colonially farmed seaweed, and especially still now, our seaweed, basically our commercial seaweed industry is, there's 3 big players, and the smaller players are trying to grow seaweed and stuff for consumption, but really, really small. So our industry is embryonic. So potentially the next 5 years, when more people are growing seaweed for consumption, that'll bring it into our cuisine and stuff.
Yep.
Given that we pull so much from other cuisines anyway, like it'd be amazing for us to be able to source culinary seaweed from the waters around where we live.
Where do you see the biggest opportunity for seaweed to slot in?
There's definitely like heaps of opportunity to use seaweed as a base for more holistic ocean management, whether that be private or public. Given that like there's some really cool ocean farming models that involve what they call multi-trophic farming, which basically in the water you can farm on like the 3D plane, because you've got the ocean floor and you've got the top of the water, right? So it's a little bit harder in Australia to lease water to farm, but in America and Asia and stuff, it's a lot easier. Like you can lease like, 100 acres of water and farm that. And if you use kind of seaweed as your base, seaweed kind of like deacidifies the water, and it's a really good environment to grow shellfish. So then all of a sudden you're farming seaweed, but you're also growing shellfish, and then it's a really good environment for fish to come and seek refuge and stuff, and you can potentially then farm fish. So you're kind of then doing this permaculture thing in the water. That for me is just like really interesting. Cool. It's a really cool way of actually helping to heal the waterways whilst also farming it. Not that necessarily privatizing waters is the way to go, but that for me is just interesting. We'll see if that happens in Australia or not.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of. There's also some really interesting First Nations models with Sea Country that are using seaweed to as a core to potentially have native title over the water. So kind of using seaweed farming as a model to present to the government to say, hey, we'd like to farm seaweed and stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of happening in South Australia, and
Awesome.
that's really exciting. Yeah.
And where is that seaweed ending up?
Well, depends on what scale. Like in Australia, most of it, there's a lot of it that goes into like seaweed, like fertilizer products.
Okay.
There's obviously a big farm down in Tassie, Sea Forrest, and they're kind of farming Sparagonopsis, like a red seaweed for livestock consumption, which reduces their methane. Because you feed it to cows, reduces the methane by an extraordinary amount. So they're using that, but a lot of the smaller players, they're making the packets of nori, you know, and are supplying chefs and stuff. So the smaller scale stuff for me is like way more interesting. Cool. It's way more localized and stuff, you know. And you're also then tapping into the terroir of like the ocean environment and stuff like that. Because a lot of it is beach cast seaweed that isn't farmed. Okay. If they can't get leases, they're literally able to comb the beach for seaweed, and which is really cool. It's basically foraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Should we try some stuff?
Let's do it, man.
So this is a green walnut liqueur.
No doubt.
But...
As in green walnuts, is that a underripe walnut?
Yeah. Yeah, like an early picked walnut that they age in spirit.
It's so smooth on the nose.
Very traditional Italian liqueur.
Oh, that's super smooth, eh?
Nocino is very, very young. It's got a great bitterness. It's got great length. Something like that could play a really nice base level to our spirit. Something along those lines. That depth of flavour and character and length.
Totally.
And I don't know how to do that without green walnuts. This is Black Juniper Amaro from Black Pearl and Never Never. So...
It looks like balsamic vinegar.
Doesn't it?
Juniper.
Black Juniper Amaro.
Whoa, yum.
So this Juniper Amaro is made by combining steeped and roasted juniper berries as well as our vapor distilled juniper from our gin production. Flavour is accentuated and balanced by traditional alpine botanicals.
Okay.
So it's 29% this one.
Wow, it's really lifted. Like.
It's got a nice bitterness.
Oh yeah, it does have nice bitterness, doesn't it?
Black peppery. Super black peppery.
Yeah, and I like that they've just used...
multiple juniper.
Yeah, exactly, like layering of junipers. And then also, I guess, the byproduct of gin, their gin production. Is kind of interesting using that.
The classic Amaro Montenegro.
What a banger.
A lot of a kind of Christmas spice type thing going on compared to the last couple.
Yeah, like ginger and cinnamon and stuff.
Yeah. I think it needs a bit more oomph. Yeah. If you're going to put seaweed in, that might be a bit too top notey.
Yeah. I like your the darkness that we're going down. Makes sense.
Thinking, imagine if we put some coffee into that.
Yeah, love it.
Some kind of earthy coffee.
Yeah.
And then layer in some... We could actually even get some smoke into it too. I've got some smoke malt coming. We could make a smoke malt syrup.
Cool.
And try that in there. So we could almost make like a Kuro version. Cool. I can see like the juniper of that going, like piney juniper of that being really nice with a bit of some of the citrus and aromatics from that.
Yeah.
And some of the earthy richness from that, and a little bit of smoke.
We've got all of it.
That sounds pretty cool, and that kombu underneath.
Yeah. I guess just basically, it's interesting if we're kind of using the kombu as a means of connecting, as a connecting thing, which for me actually, my love for seaweed, that's actually what it does in the water as well, like from an ecological point of view. So that's kind of interesting that we're not using it necessarily as like the major flavour. Yeah. We're using it as a thing that connects all of the flavours and provides length.
Yeah.
That's compelling.
I can't talk because I'm just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Good podcast material.
Yeah, I mean, I love it.
While I'm lost in my thoughts about this drink that's going to be amazing, have you eaten anything
recently that's eaten or drank anything recently that's been particularly inspiring or delicious?
We've been really enjoying this this winemaker based out of Chile, and I wish I remembered her name. This is not going to be very helpful.
It'll be in the show notes.
Okay. She's basically she works with a bunch of indigenous Chilean varieties, and has recently released 2 wines. One's kind of like quite a light red, and one is a skinsy white. And she's collaborated for each of those with another female artist that's not connected to wine on a wine.
Yeah.
So there's this red that we've been drinking, which is like super light and crunchy, not crazy expensive, but she worked with I think it was like a local cheesemaker, artisanal cheesemaker or something, and they basically just collaborated. I guess it's very similar to what we're doing now. Like brought someone in that was kind of like thinks about food, thinks about taste, and was like, come into the winery, let's make a wine together. And she's released these things. And they're just like really awesome. I love the story behind them.
Cool.
And like,
sounds like she's got awesome ideas.
I was gonna ask, you've just gotten the still, which is like a recent venture, right?
End of last year, we set it up.
Okay. And is that like a totally new a journey? You working with that, or is that somehow related to the beer making process, or is it entirely different?
It's entirely different, but I guess the ethos behind it is kind of similar. The way that we think about making spirits, and also the reason behind our name, is we're trying to combine flavours and extract the best of flavours and layer them together to build a final complete drink.
Yeah.
So that's why we're making things like pastis and gin and different flavoured Amaros and Liqueurs and things like that, because it's layering flavour on top of each other and coming up with something balanced.
Yeah, okay.
As opposed to doing like rum or whiskey, which is take a great base ingredient, ferment it, distill it, age it.
Yeah.
And it's all about those pure steps.
Yeah.
We're building flavours using ingredients.
Yeah, like you're like doing Lego with flavours.
Totally.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay.
And so that's why we chose the name Veraison, because it's the point at which flavour starts to develop. We're developing flavours ourselves as opposed to trying to harvest little bits and bobs from the raw materials.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Which is what we do with the beers.
Yeah. I see that there's like some kind of a core similarity in the kind of approach or something, you know.
Now, we haven't even spoken about your job with Minimum. Or about Minimum. Tell us a bit about what you do and what Minimum does and why you love it.
Well, yeah, I've been with Minimum for now, I think it must be like 4 or 5 years or something, you know. But basically Minimum was started by a couple, Mat and Lentil, who Mat's kind of family has a really long history of making wine in Australia. I think 160 years or something, some of the earliest winemakers in Australia. Based in Ngambie. Their family estate has the oldest Shiraz in the world. So there's some like big family history of winemaking. It's like in his blood. Kind of his method is more intuitive and stuff. That's because he has it in his blood, you know. And he was not he didn't go to winemaking school and study oenology. It's just really natural for him to work with actually all ferments, you know. Anyway, so he started Minimum with his dad and his partner Lentil. I think the first vintage was 2018, so it's still quite a young label. But there's this little vineyard that is just below Shepparton, about 120 acres. They helped convert that to organic, and then launched a label off the fruit from that block, and that's the fruit that we still just singly source from that vineyard. And then I came into the picture I think it was like late 2019. So the first wines had just come out, and I was editing a magazine at the time in Melbourne, and was kind of had been covering regenerative agriculture and stuff for a while, and I just kind of wanted to get into ag, like actually do it.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like leaving the magazine, and Matt was basically touring Vic with these wines, and I got him to come on a panel discussion about soil microbiology or something like that. And then we met, and I left the magazine, and hit him up and said, hey man, I've like left the magazine, would be good to kind of hang out and stuff. And he was basically just came on board, mainly doing kind of like marketing comm stuff for them. And then, you know, here I am 5 years later, and basically minimum is like just me, Matt, and Lentil has kind of stepped back a little bit. She's gone back to study psychology. But so it's basically just me and Matt, and we basically just do everything ourselves. It's relatively small. Still source all our grapes from this one vineyard below Shepparton. Have grafted over some new varieties, but you know, there's mainly the big players like Chardonnay, Sav, Shiraz, lots of Sangiovese, bit of Cab, Merlot. But then we've got now Grenache, Mataro. And yeah, it's still relatively small. Basically, the ethos is that, you know, we have this kind of internal mantra of like seeking the minimum, which is where the name comes from, you know. And so I guess every year as we develop our relationship with those grapes, because we just source from that one vineyard, we just start doing less and less and less, you know. And it got to the point where, you know, you came up to where we were making wine this year for this vintage, and it was just like really basic.
Yeah, low tech.
Like the thing with making like kind of low tech wine making, and the wines we've made this year are all totally natural, is that you just want to have healthy ferments, you know. Most of the time that will rest on getting healthy fruit from the vineyard, you know. But yeah, just the health of the ferments this year up on the hill were just super interesting. Yeah, it was really inspiring. So that's me now.
Yeah. I want to say thanks very much, Matt, for coming.
Thank you.
I'm
excited to do this thing.
I'm excited too. Let's recap for the podcast, because I don't know if we've got as firm of an idea on what we're going to make as we do normally.
Yeah.
But got a digestive.
Yeah. Digestive, deep flavours.
Deep flavours, richness. We're thinking maybe coffee. We're thinking definitely seaweed as like as the highlight.
Yeah.
As the drive, as the purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're thinking
possibly some smoke.
Possibly some smoke from some smoked malt.
Yeah. Like I quite like this. If we can produce a smoke that is quite subtle, it adds so much like layers of complexity.
Yeah, some smoke, some kind of piney.
Yeah, something lifted thing.
Herbal thing.
Yeah.
Now, doing the best with what we've got made me think, you're a winemaker. Should we try and put some of your wine into it as well?
No doubt. Have you ever done that in a...
Well, like, Amaro is wine based.
Okay,
Amaro.
cool.
So it's definitely a thing.
Sick.
Are there any of your reds that you think would form a cool base
for
this? We don't have to as well.
Yeah. I'm thinking like, our cab that we made this year is actually, we picked such a small amount of it that it didn't actually fill a whole barrel. So that barrel is now a bit of a red blend, but it's amazing because it's got a little bit of Grenache in there and some Merlot. And so it's got this greenness, but it's also balanced a little bit more with the Merlot to give it some depth. Yeah. So some of that could be cool.
Yeah. But, it's in a barrel, so you don't want to take anything out of it.
Well, no, like, how much do you need?
Depends how much we make. I don't know, if we do... If we do 30 litres, I imagine 20-ish.
Okay. Yeah, well, because we've also got some older stuff in barrel, which is actually possibly a little bit more matured and a little bit more refined. Like, we've got some, like, cabs from 2021 that could be pretty interesting. The tannins have kind of softened out a little bit.
Nice.
So that stuff could be cool. Whereas, like, you know, taking 20 litres out of
is there anything that's kind of past, not VA past it, but like oxidized? Because oxidized wine forms a really nice base for Amaros.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there's
always mistakes that happen.
Yeah, we don't have. Fortunately, we don't have like heaps at the moment, which is nice. Just heaps of wine, like you know. We did have this. I think we were talking before about this Chardonnay barrel that.
You had your eye on.
Yeah. That I think has become, it's developed a flora and has this oxidative kind of like style about it, but that's
not untouchable.
Yeah, that is like gonna be, I reckon, like really special, so we can't probably tap into that.
Cool. Well, have a think.
But I might find something.
Have a think, and we could possibly
That could be
do
cool, though.
this coffee, kombu, smoke on a base of some form of wine.
Yeah.
Maybe or maybe not. About 30%.
Interesting. Yeah, let's definitely get some wine in there.
Yeah.
I'm sure I can find something in the
Yeah.
winery that is amenable to it.
Yeah. Sounds good. And we have to figure out what kind of kelp, what kind of kombu we
Yeah,
use.
I think-
We've got to source some kombu.
I think kombu,
Yeah.
given that that's actually where the umami thing was founded
Yeah.
on, like kombu dashi, we've got to source some kombu.
Source some Australian kombu.
Yeah, you can leave that with me, maybe.
Okay.
I'm sure I can.
Am I just going to get a bucket like, on the front
Just a
step of
stinky
the brewery? Just a bucket of seaweed.
Yeah, I'll get the wetsuit on and go grab some.
Yeah. When we make kombu, it smells like... When we make Kuro, it smells like under a jetty in the whole brewery.
Yeah. Because it's pretty punchy. It's also
It is.
like, even just like kombu as like as a thing, it's like just so robust, you know. It's such a thick, you know, no doubt it smells like kind of dank.
It does smell... It smells like... It's like that slightly unpleasant,
Yeah.
fishy, under the jetty aroma.
Yeah, it's like elemental.
But also a little bit great.
Yeah.
But you're also like, oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, which is also like, that's why seaweed gets such a hard rap, because people relate to it as this rotting thing on the beach, which of course that's when it's composting and stuff. Like that's actually not. That's kombu when it's at its worst.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, I can find some Australian
Love it.
kombu, and if I can't find that, then something Australian would be amazing.
Awesome. Let's do it. All right. Thanks very much, Matt. I'm excited.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is going to be cool.
Yeah. Ripper.